Hey everybody, welcome to Junk Food News, our February edition. We're going to start by talking about some of the stuff that happened in February. First of all, February 1st, National Baked Alaska Day. How can you forget that? One of the things we noticed about February, particularly in the beginning, is there was a lot of posts about cakes. There was a Lego cake post. There was a thing about a cake that looked like amethyst and real rocks. So that was kind of, I don't know, is February a big cake month or something like that? In February, Pizza Hut released a new pizza topping, lobster. A whole half a lobster on top of a pizza. Yeah, I don't think so. If you're looking for any of the links for the articles that we may have posted, you can check out our Twitter feed and just look back through that, and that'll tell you some of the links that we're talking about now, as well as some of the ones that we're not talking about. Apparently, the University of Kentucky is now offering a class on tacos. Mental Floss has a great article on this subject, and I think I would love to, have a class on tacos. I think there's a few other fast food topics that might be worth having classes on, like pizza, hamburgers, and maybe some of the more intricate things like some Japanese food. That couldn't possibly hurt your resume, having a class on tacos. There was another article in Mental Floss recently about author Gene Wolfe. Actually, it was a series of the article was about a series of authors and other inventions that they made. But Gene Wolfe actually used to work for Procter and Gamble, and he actually created a machine that helps them make Pringles. That's a great man. And the strange thing about Gene Wolfe is actually, if you put a picture of the Pringles guy next to Gene Wolfe, they look exactly the same. Coincidence? Who knows? Did you know that Marshmallow Fluff's recipe has never changed, and it's almost 100 years old? And the original family that started the Fluff still involved with the company today, so it's a really unchanged product. Some people might wish it might change, though, because there's a lot of people who don't like Fluff. This month, VAT19 released their giant gummy bear chair. For a mere $40, you can get a giant gummy bear inflatable chair. I've had inflatable chairs before, and they're not very comfortable, but maybe this one might feel like getting a giant hug from a giant gummy bear. That would be pretty awesome. BuzzFeed had a pretty interesting article in February all about the difference between first-class food on an airplane and economy-class food on an airplane. This actually turned out to be kind of more relevant because later on in February, I was to go to Thailand. The beginning of February also gave us a lot of interesting snack food ideas because the Super Bowl was happening, and who doesn't like to have football-themed snacks? Mental Floss had an interesting list this month of crazy fast food pizzas from around the world. Now, as you know, I think Pizza Hut sort of made this popular where they started putting crazy things inside their crust. They started with just cheese. I mean, that was pretty simple. But then there was like bacon wrap pizza, cheeseburger crust pizza that had full cheeseburgers on it, cone crust pizza, barbecue chicken pizza, Doritos Crunch pizza, cranberry and apple stuffed crust pizza, Fritos chili pizza, and salmon and fish roe pizza, Marmite stuffed pizza. It's just crazy, some of the stuff that you can get sort of put in it. The weirdest one I thought, though, was the KFC Chizza, which is basically a piece of chicken with pizza toppings melted on top. Now, if you thought the double down was kind of crazy, I think this just sort of takes it the next step up. This year, as well, on the Candy Critic blog, we had a list of some of the junk food commercials that were seen during the Super Bowl. I have to admit, and it says in the article, I was kind of disappointed with some of the commercials this year. They seem to be just doing the same thing over and over again. There was a Doritos commercial about a woman giving birth where a guy kept pulling the chip away and eventually threw the bag and the baby came out. That was kind of funny. But I think it's about time that Super Bowl commercials changed a little bit, and I want to see more innovation. There was a new gadget discovered this month that was called Panda Bear Toast. And basically, it's this weird gadget that you can press down into your bread, and it cuts it and sort of indents it at the same time, creating this crazy panda bear shape. And it's the greatest thing about it is the way it cuts it, it actually makes it a three-dimensional panda bear shaped toast. I don't know if I've ever needed that, and I'm not really sure how one puts jam on that. Who doesn't like advancements in toast? The month of February also a new sort of trend of articles came out about food rotting. A A lot of people talk about the fact or the idea that if a McDonald's hamburger is sitting out on a counter for a month and it doesn't rot, that rotting has correlation with sort of natural foods. A few scientists and a few sort of food people have sort of argued that a little bit, saying there's a lot of foods out there that can last forever that don't rot and are still perfectly good for you. Things like honey, syrups. What a lot of people, food scientists, are talking about, and I've actually researched this a bit, is rotting has more to do with moisture than it has to do with freshness or anything like that. So, of course, fruit rots because it's very full of moisture. Certain other things don't, because, fat can congeal and then the moisture goes away. Breads and stuff often don't have as much moisture, so unless they're within a wet area, like if there's a tomato or a piece of lettuce, then it tends to rot. Sugars stop rotting, which we know sugars aren't great for you, but within reason they can be. So there's a really interesting controversy coming up about the idea of rotting and the idea of whether or not something is good for you or not. It's not to say that, whether or not food is, food that's bad for you may not rot, but not all food that doesn't rot is bad for you. So it's an interesting little controversy, and I'm hoping that maybe some more science about that is going to come out soon. In the world of science, there was an interesting article about scientists using cotton candy machines to make artificial blood vessels. Apparently the machinery within the cotton candy machine sort of is perfect for creating artificial blood vessels. So way to go science, saving lives, and way to go candy machines, also saving lives with science. Of course, the month of February we have to talk about Valentine's Day, right? One of the more interesting articles we discovered about Valentine's Day was apparently Doritos bouquets are a thing. Why buy a box of chocolates when you can hand her some spicy hot chips in the shape of flowers, right? The Globe and Mail had a really interesting article about how to taste chocolate like a pro in 7 easy steps. Now, I do agree, most of the steps that they sort of put out there are good. I mean, it's something that I would often do. I think it takes a little bit of time to sort of figure it out. You have to taste a lot of chocolate to be able to tell the difference between good and bad chocolate. I've been doing it for years, and I wouldn't even say that I know how to do it perfectly. But I got to tell you, if you want to learn to be a chocolate connoisseur, it's probably the greatest learning curve possible. I mean, what do you do to practice? Eat more chocolate. This month, we seriously had a lot of articles about Girl Scout cookies. There was one about how to pair Girl Scout cookies with wine, one about how to pair Girl Scout cookies with beer, something about how to tell the best kind of Girl Scout cookies depending on the region that you're going on. And then even, I think during the Oscars, they were giving out Girl Scout cookies. I imagine, unfortunately, because I'm Canadian and I don't even live in Canada right now, we don't have Girl Scout cookies. So is this the month that Girl Scout cookies are for sale? Because if they are, please, somebody send me some. I'd love to eat some, particularly those Thin Mints. Those are amazing. Mental Floss had an interesting article about 15 inventive uses for leftover Valentine's chocolate. Why in the world do you have chocolate left over? If you're listening to a podcast about junk food and reading a website about candy, you should not have chocolate left over. Lifehacker had a really interesting article about how your food choices are influenced by outside factors. Basically, they're talking about all the things that in your environment, within the way your brain works and everything like that influence what you eat. It's about time, because now I don't have to blame myself for my love of candy. I can blame everybody around me, right? There was a great article about eating like a president. They had some of the favorite foods of U.S. presidents, including directions on how to make them and recipes. 2 presidents you should look out for are Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson, because they had some pretty good taste. Boing Boing has a really interesting article about a medical student that makes biological illustrations out of candy. This guy decides to make just these crazy things, these beautiful sculptures about biological body parts and organs and everything like that made out of candy. And who wouldn't want that? Now, I've written a lot about military rations on the blog before and talked about them a bit, but apparently there's people who collect really, 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 really old military rations. Like we're talking 45 years old, and apparently, even to make this worse, there's people who then eat 45-year-old military rations. Now, from what I understand, they do last a few years, but I don't think they last 45 years. I can't imagine. I mean, a lot of military rations don't taste good in the first place. Making them 45 years can only make them worse, right? Near the end of February, Mars were called Snickers bars and Mars bars in the UK and in other countries in Europe because apparently there was a bit of plastic found in some German chocolate bars. So if you happen to have got some imports, you might want to check those out before you eat them. Geekology had an interesting article about a man who changed his name legally to Double Cheeseburger. Now, I've had a few good cheeseburgers in my life, but I don't know if I've had enough good cheeseburgers that I need to change my name to Double Cheeseburger. In fact, I was racking my brain about any food that I might want to, name myself after. Maybe Kit Kat? Have you ever read on the internet an idea and then thought to yourself, why in the world hasn't this been happening all the time? This month on Lifehacker, there was an article about replacing the sugar in your coffee with squares of chocolate. Why in the world this hasn't been a thing? Why in the world we don't go to coffee shops and have little squares of chocolate instead of sugar? And why this hasn't been happening for decades now blows my mind. Good old Japan, keeping it weird. Apparently a group called Nico Republic is hoping that they can provide an alternative for you and your cat. Yes, if you're sick of just eating your snacks and not being able to share them with your cat safely, they've got the answer for you because they're producing a series of snacks that's fun to eat for you and your kitty and will give them no harm at all. Really, is this something we need? The hamburger wars in the United States are an interesting topic to sort of read about. One of the more interesting ones that I read about this month was A&W's 1/3 pound burger, or the third pound burger. Apparently they released it to try and compete against McDonald's quarter pounder burger. Now, it didn't go well and they had to cancel it and they stopped it, but the reason why they stopped it is kind of weird. People thought that it was smaller than the quarter pounder. Now, this says a little bit about burger places and the way they advertise, but it also says a lot about how much people know math. This month, on the Ghostbusters front, because everybody's excited about the new Ghostbusters movie, there are two interesting things in the snack world. First of all, sort of secondary, Twinkies is apparently releasing a key lime slime Twinkie, which basically from the photo I saw looks like a Twinkie with green cream in the middle, which, that's fine. But in the big news, apparently Hi-C is re-releasing Ecto Cooler. There's been lots of articles that we published on the Candy Critic blog and lots of people that have been dying for the re-release of Ecto Cooler. And maybe this new Ghostbuster movie will allow us to have this again, and maybe we'll get more things. I really have some fond memories of, I think I went to, it might have been a White Castle when I was a kid, and they had Ghostbusters tie-in. It was a green slime sundae, and I have certainly fond memories of that. So here's hoping that this new franchise is going to give us lots of cool Ghostbusters stuff. As you know, February was a leap day year this February, and Arby's decided that for some reason, maybe because they thought it was April 1st instead, that they would release a vegetarian Arby's menu. Now you may be thinking, oh, well maybe like tofu or something like that inside there, which doesn't sound very appetizing either, but they did something more ridiculous. They just took out the meat. Yeah, Arby's, you got to come up with something better than that. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us today. I've gone through our Twitter feed, which you can go through, which you go to, at Candy Critic on Twitter, and you can follow us all the time and always pick up on all the new articles as we're posting them, or go back and see some of the other articles that I was talking about on this. I hope you enjoyed listening to this, and I hope you had a good Valentine's Day, a good leap year, and all the cool stuff that happened. Hope you enjoyed the Oscars and watching Leonardo DiCaprio eat Girl Scout cookies, because I think he enjoyed eating them for us. So thanks for listening to Junk Food News, and we'll talk to you next month.